Welcome to the WeRPN Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging series on diversity and intersectionality. The learning objectives for this module are that learners can define diversity and intersectionality, review the many dimensions of diversity, explore intersectionality, and relate it to their practice. Review the sources of challenges and resistance to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, and examine how to navigate resistance and challenges to DEI policies and procedures. The Canadian Centre for Diversity and Inclusion defines diversity as the variety of unique dimensions, qualities, and characteristics we all possess, and the mix that occurs in any group of people. Simply put, dimensions of diversity are the individual attributes that make us diverse. It would be difficult to compile a full list of all the things that make us different because there are so many factors. Dimensions of diversity can include things such as race, color, age, gender and gender identity, sexual orientation, immigration status, parental status, marital status, occupation, political beliefs, income and socioeconomic status, religious beliefs, ethnicity and national origin, physical and mental ability, veteran status, and education, to name some of the many examples. Understanding these dimensions may assist nurses and other healthcare professionals in recognizing and assessing their influence on patients, thereby enhancing their capacity to advocate for the needs of those in their care. Some dimensions are more obvious and can be observed. However, some dimensions cannot be determined without getting to know someone, such as age, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation, to name a few examples. It is important that nurses are aware of the potential bias and don't make assumptions based on our observations if we see an attribute that we associate with a certain dimension. For example, not everyone who has gray hair is elderly. It's quite common for younger people to have gray hair, so nurses and other healthcare professionals should not make assumptions of someone's age based on this physical trait. Another example is how the color of one's skin does not determine where they are from. Although people often make assumptions based on these dimensions, we need to ensure that we are not making judgments based on these physical attributes. Intersectionality is an approach or framework for understanding how multiple social identities, such as race, gender, sexual orientation, and disability, interact with each other and influence the individual experience. It is important for nurses to be aware of the influence that varying levels of power, privilege, and oppression that the intersectionality of dimensions may have on a person, and how it influences their ability to access care. Intersectionality is not simply additive. As referenced by Srivastava 2023, intersecting dimensions interact with each other to create a unique experience of exclusion and disadvantage. Discrimination in healthcare intersects in many ways, and nurses must assess clients' risk of health inequities resulting from discrimination and marginalization. As nurses assess clients to determine their risk, it is important to recognize how overlapping discrimination experienced by individuals who are part of more than one group or who have multiple risk factors put them at higher risk of experiencing inequities. A practice example of how intersectionality impacts patients who are accessing care is how women who are Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, otherwise known as BIPOC, experience racism and discrimination when accessing sexual and reproductive health care. In this example, discrimination based on race, skin color, and gender create negative experiences for BIPOC women. These experiences can further promote inequities for BIPOC women because they create fear and affirm the lack of trust that many BIPOC communities already have in the healthcare system due to historic injustices that occurred in Ontario and across Canada, such as the impacts of colonialism and the Indian residential school system as an example. As discussed earlier in this module, a person may experience discrimination based on dimensions that are not observable, and it is important not to make assumptions. Both visible and invisible attributes of a person may be contributing to intersectional discrimination. Nurses should ask patients if they are open to sharing their lived experiences and take action to prevent and address discrimination if they observe or identify it in their practice environments. Challenges and resistance to DEI initiatives may stem from a perceived threat that members of majority groups experience. Although often perceived as negative, when managed effectively, conflict can help nurses and their teams address issues such as resistance to policies and procedures that are founded in DEI principles. Addressing these issues in a constructive way can lead to positive outcomes for nurses and other healthcare professionals and the healthcare of the organization, ultimately supporting culturally safe care for patients and their families. By identifying the type of threat that individuals or groups are experiencing, nurses and other healthcare professionals can help to address this resistance. The article titled Understanding Advantaged Groups' Opposition to Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Policies, The Role of Perceived Threat, by R.D. Lyer, categorizes the types of threats into three categories: resource threat, symbolic threat, and in-group morality threat. A resource threat is when members of a majority group perceive that DEI initiatives are taking away opportunities because they are being given to people who aren't part of the group. A symbolic threat occurs when an individual feels that their values, beliefs, or way of living are threatened. As things begin to change, people can sometimes fear that their normal way of life will change. In the workplace, for instance, changes from traditional organizational policy or career progression opportunities becoming more considerate of diverse people groups may induce a resistive response in some individuals. Finally, a threat to group morality is where the members of an advantaged group feel that their positive group image is threatened. They may become resistant when they believe that the group's competence, sociability, or morality are no longer in line with societal standards. Nurses and healthcare workers can support DEI policies within their organization and help address challenges and resistance by understanding and communicating the intentions of these policies. Strategies to address perceived resource threats and symbolic threats within the healthcare team include highlighting that DEI policies relate to social justice principles, where fairness is the objective and outcomes are based on what people have earned. Communicating that the goal is reducing barriers for all instead of taking away opportunities from the advantage group may help to develop a common understanding within the healthcare team that a merit-based system is one that is fair. Furthermore, explaining that the disadvantaged groups continue to experience discrimination and barriers resulting from historic oppression can help to emphasize that these policies are based on the principles of merit and justice. By supporting social change and DEI policies, nurses and other healthcare workers can help to address the challenges and resistance related to a perceived in-group morality threat. Focusing on the disadvantaged outgroup may help to shift attention to the inequities they experience, fostering empathy and perspective taking of the groups who have experienced historical injustices. By supporting DEI policies in the workplace and helping manage perceived threats within the healthcare team through effective communication, nurses and other healthcare professionals aid in the development of a healthcare organization that provides culturally safe care that meets the unique needs of each patient. Here are 5 key takeaways for nurses and healthcare professionals to support DEI initiatives in their practice. First, develop an understanding of the dimensions of diversity. Diversity encompasses a wide range of individual attributes, as previously noted. Nurses and other healthcare professionals should understand these dimensions and consider their own biases to better recognize their impact on patients and to advocate effectively for patients' diverse needs. For more information about personal biases and resources for personal reflection, visit the WeRPN Cultural Competence Learning modules and the My Commitment to Cultural Safety workbook. Consider how intersectionality impacts health inequities. Intersectionality and overlapping social identities can compound barriers and discrimination, leading to health inequities. Nurses must assess clients for multiple risk factors and be aware of how discrimination based on various dimensions intersects to increase vulnerability to inequities. Third, identify key challenges of DEI initiatives. Resistance to DEI initiatives often stems from perceived threats among majority groups, such as resource threat, symbolic threat, and in-group morality threat. Understanding these threats can help nurses and other healthcare workers address resistance constructively and promote cultural safety in healthcare environments. Fourth, help address resistance to DEI policies. Nurses can support DEI policies by communicating their intentions effectively and addressing perceived threats. Strategies include emphasizing justice principles, highlighting the goal of reducing barriers for all, and fostering empathy and perspective taking towards disadvantaged groups. And lastly, promote social change in healthcare. By supporting DEI policies and advocating for social change, nurses and other healthcare workers can contribute to addressing challenges and resistance related to in group morality threats, focusing on addressing health inequities and fostering understanding among healthcare teams can help shift perspective and promote inclusivity in healthcare settings.